Hello, today I'm going to share with you my studies on why church is bad and why you should not be a part of church and why you should leave a church if you are part of it. So, I typed everything up already a while back, so I'm going to be reading from my notes. So bear with me on everything, but hopefully I can shed some light on some things, and if my conclusion is wrong, hopefully you can help me see otherwise. But I'm going to present some facts that have led me to the conclusion that I presented. So I'll get with it. When we read our English rendering of the Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek scriptures, we will not see the English word church anywhere in the entire Old Testament. However, you will find the word church all throughout the New Testament. If you ask someone why that is, they will tell you that is because Jesus established the church. If you've ever asked that question, have you ever asked, can they show you through the scriptures that Jesus, Yahusha, established the church? In other words, can they show you, or can you show me in the Bible where Jesus added or created something new to the already existing word of the Father? Where does it say that Jesus now created this new thing called the church? Well, I couldn't find it anywhere. If you can find it, send it my way, please. And by the way, I am aware of Matthew 16:18, and I will discuss that throughout this presentation. I understand that comment, that answer, makes sense since you hear Jesus talk about the church, and you never heard anyone else prior to him mention that word, church. So, that is completely understandable. However, we should want to dig in a little deeper since that is a non-biblical response. And also, you can't or you shouldn't add anything new to the word. And you can get that in Proverbs 30 verses 5 through 6, Deuteronomy 12:32, etc. There's numerous places. You're not supposed to add to the word. If anything that sounds new, it should have been proposed through the prophets. So if anything is new or something that is supposed to be established, it should have been presented to us through prophets. And you can read about that in Amos chapter 3 verse 7. So I would like someone to show me through the prophets where it says that the Messiah was going to create something as huge and powerful as the church. So, by the way, I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but there is 2.42 billion members of the church today, and who knows how many over the past 1700 odd years when the church was established. But at least currently there's almost 2.5 billion people on the planet today that are members of the church. But I'm going to get back on topic. So the first time that you'll read that word church in the Bible in our English Bible is Matthew 16:18. And it says, "And I say also unto thee, that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." Now, let's focus on, "and upon this rock I will build my church," because that is the first time that that word is given to us in our English Bible. What could he possibly be talking about, right? Well, if you read from the beginning of the chapter, right before he has that conversation with Peter and the other disciples, he just got done criticizing the Pharisees and the Sadducees. After criticizing them, he tells his disciples to watch out for their false doctrine. Then he proceeds on with the above quote. So he tells Peter, "Upon this rock I will build my church." Let's somewhat try to get a better understanding. Upon what rock? What is a rock? Is he talking about Peter because his name's Petros? Or what was he talking about? Upon what rock? Let's try to get a biblical definition of what the rock is. Psalms 42:9, Psalm 78:35, 2 Samuel 23:3, etc. There are numerous verses that say that the rock is God, is Elohim. That is the rock. So, the foundation upon which he will build his church is Elohim, is God. Okay, what does it mean he's going to build his church? So that word is house or strength, sturdy, properly to build a house, home, edifice, to edify, literally build someone up, helping them to stand, be strong, sturdy. That's Strong's 36:24. I cannot pronounce that Greek word. Sorry, I can't pronounce that Greek word. Strong's 36:24. So, his house, his strength, his church will be built on the foundation of Elohim, of God. Now, let's get to the main focal point, which is the church. This is what's going to be built, right? The church is extremely important. It's the body of the Messiah. You can read that in one of Paul's letters, Colossians chapter 1, 24, verse 24, 124 Colossians. So, the church is the body. So what is that Greek word, since there's Greek manuscripts? Ecclesia is the word used in the scriptures that was mistranslated as the word church for whatever reason. Church in Greek is karakos, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So karakos was only used twice in the entire New Testament. Only 2 times. It's interesting that both times it was not translated as church. Ecclesia, however, was used 114 times, and the majority of the times it was translated as church wrongfully. And a handful of the other times it was accurately translated as assembly. That's kind of weird, right? Let's see what the blue letter interlinear says. Ecclesia, an assembly, a religious congregation. A short definition, which is a definition, it's not necessarily a definition, it's just words that, it's just the words how it was translated in the scriptures, so that it's given to us as a definition, is an assembly, congregation, church, because it was translated as church. So, ecclesia, ek, out from, and to, kalia, to call. So properly, people called out from the world to God, to Elohim. The outcome being the church, the mystical body of Christ, the universal total body of believers whom God calls out from the world and into his eternal kingdom. The English word church comes from the Greek word kyriakos, belonging to the Lord. Kyriakos, or Kyrios, Kyrios. Ecclesia is the root of the terms eschatology and eschatological. I can't pronounce that stuff. So ecclesia literally means called out ones, assembly or congregation. Church comes from a different word, kyriakos. Totally different word. So back to the first time it was put into our Bible. Jesus, Yehoshua, is telling Peter that his house, his strength, the body, the called out ones will be built on the foundation of Elohim, of God. With that being said, I'm really not trying to push any type of doctrine on that, but I just, do your own studies to verify all of that stuff, of course. That really isn't the point I'm trying to push on that particular verse. It's just the very first time that word it was presented to us, and it sounds like he's building something new. So that's why I'm talking about that verse. So the main thing that I really wanted to point out about that verse is he was talking to his disciples, and Peter, one of the disciples, and that how he supposedly used that word church, and he used it so fluently towards them as if they should understand what he is referring to, right? Like if he used the word church, then he used it fluently, like they should comprehend what he's saying. But it's interesting to note that after he used this totally new word, because it's not anywhere else prior to that, right? This new word, church, his disciples didn't question him out of confusion of what he was referring to. So they understood what he was talking about. They understood what church, or more accurately, the ecclesia, the called out ones, assembly of the congregation meant. They knew what that meant, because he didn't speak a different word. So, like I've pointed out, he didn't use the word church. He used words assembly, congregation, or called out ones. That is why they understood what he was referring to. So again, let's look at the wording one last time. Ecclesia, assembly, congregation, called out ones. Church is an English word that comes from kyriakos, belonging to the Lord. Let's look what the English definition of the English word church means. Church, a building used for a public Christian worship. They came to church with me. Synonyms: place of worship, house of God, house of worship, cathedral, abbey, chapel, megachurch, synagogue, mosque, a village church. A particular Christian organization, typically one with its own clergy, buildings, and distinctive doctrines. The Church of England, denomination. One second. The hierarchy of clergy of a Christian organization, especially the Roman Catholic Church or the Church of England. Institutionalized religion as a political or social force. The separation of church and state. Churches, past tense, churched, past principle. Churched. Gerund or present principle. Churching. Take a woman who has recently given birth to church for service of thanksgiving. Old English, curcy, related to Dutch kirk, German kirk, based on medieval Greek kurikon, from Greek kurakondama, Lord's house, from kurios, master or lord. Compare with kirk. So, a church is a building tied together with the Roman Catholic Church. So now, carefully read the New Testament and pay attention to the times it uses the word church. When you do, you will discover that every time it uses that word, it is obviously not referring to a building. It is absolutely referring to a group of people. So, church, building, place of worship, was deliberately put into our Bible for whatever reason. So we'll try to figure out that reason. So, if you look up the word church in the Catholic Encyclopedia, and look up the word church, this is what it says. This is, I'm quoting out of the Catholic Encyclopedia, under the word church. So you got to look up church in there. The term ecclesia. In order to understand the precise force of this word, something must first be said as to its employment by the Septuagint translators of the Old Testament. Although in one or two places, Psalms 25:5, Judith 6:21, etc., the word is used without religious signification, merely in the sense of an assembly. This is not usually the case. Ordinarily, it is employed as the Greek equivalent of the Hebrew kahal, i.e., the entire community of the children of Israel, viewed in their religious aspect. Two Hebrew words are employed in the Old Testament to signify the congregation of Israel, kahal edah. In the Septuagint, these are rendered respectively ecclesia, the church, and synagogue. Thus, in Proverbs 5:14, where the words occur together in the midst of the church and the congregation. The Greek rendering is in meso ecclesias kia synagoges. The distinction is indeed not rigorously observed. Thus, in Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, both words are regularly represented by synagogue, but it is adhered to in the great majority of cases and may be regarded as an established rule. In the writings of the New Testament, the words are sharply distinguished. With them, ecclesia denotes the Church of Christ. Synagoga, the Jews still adhering to the worship of the Old Covenant. Occasionally, it is true, ecclesia is employed in its general significance of just an assembly, Acts 19:32, 1 Corinthians 14:19, and synagoga occurs once in reference to a gathering of Christians though apparently of a non-religious character, James 2:2. But ecclesia is never used by the apostles to denote the Jewish church. The word, as a technical expression, had been transferred to the community of Christian believers. It has been frequently disputed whether there is any difference in the signification of the two words. St. Augustine distinguishes them on the ground that ecclesia is indicative of the calling together of men, synagoga of the forcible herding together of irrational creatures. And it speaks something in Latin that I can't pronounce. But it may be doubted whether there is any foundation for this view. It would appear, however, that the term kahal was used with the special meaning of those called by God to eternal life, while edah denoted merely the actual existing Jewish community. They got that from the from the History of Jewish People, Volume 2, is where they had got that. Though the evidence for this distinction is drawn from the Mishnah, and thus belongs to a somewhat later date, yet the difference in meaning probably existed at the time of Christ's ministry. But however, this may have been his intention in employing the term here too used of the Hebrew people viewed as a church to denote the society he himself was establishing cannot be mistaken. It implied the claim that this society now constituted the true people of God, that the old covenant was passing away, and that he, the promised Messiah, was inaugurated a new covenant with a new Israel. So that's out of the Catholic Encyclopedia under Church. So according to the Church's own records, that word ecclesia does not mean and should never have been translated as a building, place of worship, church. It should have never been translated as church. It means exactly what I said earlier: congregation, assembly, chosen, called out ones. But it says that it is referring to the entire congregation of Israel. That's interesting. Israel is the ecclesia, the called out ones. Doesn't the church tell you that you are not Israel, that you are a Gentile? Don't they also say that Israel is the Jews? I guess they forgot how to do math. Isn't Israel 12 tribes? Isn't the Jews the one tribe, Judah? So it's kind of like America. Every resident of America is considered American. However, every American in America is not Native American. America is full of different tribes of people, Asian, Hispanic, etc. But all of us are American. It is the same concept as Israel. Jews, Judah is only one of the 12. So all Jews are Israel, but not every Israelite is a Jew. So why was that word church put in our Bible? Trying to seek out this answer really isn't that hard to do. Obviously, the KJV 1611 has the word church inside of it. But then one should ask, was the KJV the first English Bible? The answer is no. Now, there was a small handful of Bible translations prior to the KJV 1611, most of which were translated from the Latin Vulgate manuscripts into English, which I myself personally, I do not believe those are authoritative manuscripts, but that's my opinion. I lean more towards the Greek personally over the Latin. However, there was a Bible printed from the Greek manuscripts into English prior to the KJV. And the person who translated it was William Tyndale. If you read Tyndale's version, you will not find the word church in it. The reason why Tyndale didn't put that word in his Bible is because that word, ecclesia, does not translate as church, building, place of worship. If you do some research about William Tyndale, you'll discover that the church murdered him and tried to burn as many of his Bibles as they could get their hands on. So this quote is off of Wikipedia, but they quoted out of a book. I don't have it on hand. It's up on my shelf, but a book about a couple books about William Tyndale. One was like the bestseller, God's bestseller, something along those lines. Anyways, the main quote is off of Wikipedia, so I'm gonna read the quote. I'm gonna quote it. The hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church did not approve of some of the words and phrases introduced by Tyndale, such as overseer, where it would have been understood as bishop, elder for priest, and love rather than charity. Tyndale, citing Erasmus, contended that the Greek New Testament did not support the traditional Roman Catholic teachings. More controversially, Tyndale translated the Greek ecclesia, literally called out ones, as congregation rather than church. It has been asserted this translation choice was a direct threat to the church's ancient. But so Tyndale here made clear non-scriptural claim to be the body of Christ on earth. To change these words was to strip the church hierarchy of its pretensions to be Christ's terrestrial representative, and to award this honor to individual worshipers who made up each congregation. So that's off Wikipedia, off of William Tyndale, reading up on William Tyndale. So the church had put that false translation in our Bible to give authority to themselves. So, ecclesia, the church, or the called out ones, in the Old Testament. Is it in the Old Testament? Is it before Matthew 16? It is. It is. So before I get into this topic, I'd like to repeat something that I've slightly mentioned once already. Back to Matthew 16:18. Not too sure if you noticed or not, but when Jesus mentioned that rendered word church to his disciples, they never questioned him about it. That's weird. His disciples questioned him multiple times when they did not understand what he was talking about. And if some reason they didn't question him about the totally new word church, they didn't question him on that. So it's because he didn't use that term. The reason they didn't question him about it is because that word ecclesia does not mean church, building, place of worship, but instead it's literally talking about the called out ones, the assembly, congregation of the complete body of Israel. So why do I say Israel? Well, again, I quoted what the Roman Catholics say in the Catholic Encyclopedia, that the ecclesia, the kahal in Hebrew, is literally talking about the children of Israel. Well, I got more. Well, I've already pointed out from the church's own documents how they know ecclesia is talking about Israel, Elohim's chosen people. But I'd like to point out why as well. I'm sure you've heard of the Septuagint, the LXX. If not, I recommend you checking into it. I'm not going to explain, but the Septuagint, or LXX. If you are for it or against it, no matter what, it is an old copy of the Hebrew Aramaic Old Testament translated into the Greek language. It just so happens to be the same Greek language as our New Testament manuscripts. Well, if you check the Septuagint, you will see that word ecclesia throughout it, the supposed church, but the called out ones. You will see ecclesia throughout the Old Testament. I'll provide verses for you, but only a few. I absolutely recommend that you do your own research to make sure I'm not leading you astray. The ecclesia was used in Deuteronomy 4:10, Deuteronomy 9:10, Deuteronomy 18:16, Joshua, Yahusha 8:35. And there's several other places where that church is in the Old Testament, and it's literally talking about the children of Israel, the completed body of the children of Israel. So what I'm presenting to you is the extremely important body of the Messiah, which we all should want to be a part of, because I understand, it's important. We want to be a part of it. It is the completed assembly of Israel, the called out ones of Israel. The church has deliberately changed the wording of our scriptures to give reverence to themselves and to separate you from being part of Elohim's people. Here's a New Testament verse that supports that Israel is the church, if you will. And it's in Acts chapter 7. Turn to it real quick because I don't have it open, sorry. And anyways, it's in Acts chapter 7 verse 38, and this is Stephen, when Stephen is criticizing I believe the Jews. I'm not too sure offhand, but anyways, this is Stephen talking, and he's verse 38. 7:38. This is he who was in the church in the wilderness with the messenger, the angel, who spoke to him on Mount Sinai, and with our fathers who received the living words to give us. He's talking about Moses. So Moses was with the church. Now, you will only read that word church in the KJV Bible, the first KJV Bible, because the KJV translators, they translated that word ecclesia as church most of the time. Only a small handful of times they didn't. And they slipped up and they translated ecclesia as church in that verse. So if you look at the New King James Version, they corrected that. They changed that because of the dispensational view that the church is not Israel. But if you look at a KJV version of 738, you will read that word church as being the Israelites with Moses in the wilderness. But your other ESV and NIV, they won't say church either. And the New King James won't say church, but an Old King James says church. So the complete called out ones of Israel should have never been replaced as a building place of worship. That's a huge deception. I'll get to why I think that's important, but I want to point out a couple things. So our Messiah said this. So I want to quote our Messiah. So maybe he's a liar. I don't know. I don't think he was. But in Matthew chapter 15, I'm not going to read the whole context of it, but he mentions this. Matthew 15:24, and he answering said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So he was sent for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So I'm going to jump around a little bit. I want to present a question, because we know that the called out ones, the congregation, the assembly, that's who we want to be a part of. The church it's important. You want to be part of the body of the Messiah, right? So what is a body? What makes a body, right? Hopefully that's a legitimate question. What makes a body? There's a handful of verses throughout the scriptures that I can read. I'm only going to read this to kind of get my point across. It's Matthew 19, verses 3 through 6. And the Pharisees came to him, trying him, and saying to him, Is it right for a man to put away his wife for every reason? And he answering said to them, Did you not read that he who had made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, For this cause a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So it takes two to become one flesh. It takes a marriage. So it takes a marriage to become a body, one completed body. So you want to be part of the body, right? So I'm going to go through some scriptures and just kind of bear with me. So this is Jeremiah chapter 3. I'm going to read verses 1 through 10. Elohim said, If a man puts away his wife, and she goes from him and becomes another man's, does he return to her again? Would not that land be made greatly unclean? But you have committed whoring with many lovers. And would you return to me, declares Yod-Heh. Lift up your eyes to bare heights and see, where you have not lain with men. Besides, the ways you have sat for them like an Abrim in the wilderness, and you made the land unclean with your whorings and your evil. Therefore, the showers have been withheld, and there has been no latter rain. You have had a whore's forehead. You refuse to be ashamed. Shall you not from now on cry to me, my Father? You are the guide of my youth. Does one bear a grudge forever? Does one keep it to the end? See, you have spoken and done the evils that you could. And Yod-Heh said to me in the days of Yoshayahu the sovereign, have you seen what backsliding Israel has done? She has gone up on every high mountain and under every green tree, and there committed whoring. And after she had done all these, I said, return to me. But she did not return. And her treacherous sister Judah saw it. And I saw that for all the causes for which backsliding Israel had committed adultery, I had put her away and given her a certificate of divorce. Yet her treacherous sister Judah did not fear, but went and committed whoring too. And it came to be through her frivolous whoring that she defiled the land and committed adultery with stones and wood. And yet, for all this, her treacherous sister Judah has not turned to me with all her heart, but falsely, declares Yod-Heh. I'm going to read Hosea chapter 2, verses 13 through 20. And I shall punish her. And read the context. It's talking about Israel and Judah. And I shall punish her for the days of the Baals, to which she burned incense and adorned herself with her rings and jewelry, and went after her lovers, and forgot me, declares Yod-Heh. Therefore, see, I am alluring her, and shall lead her into the wilderness, and shall speak to her, shall speak to her heart, and give to her vineyards from there, and the valley of Achor as a door of expectation, and there she shall respond as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came up from the land of Mitzrayim. And it shall be in that day, declares Yod-Heh, that you shall call me my husband, and no longer call me my Baal, my Lord. And I shall remove the names of the Baals from her mouth, and they shall no more be remembered by their name. And in that day I shall make a covenant for them, and the beasts of the field, and with the birds of the heavens, and with the creeping creatures of the ground, when bow and sword and battle I break from the earth, and I shall make them lie down in safety. And I shall take you as a bride unto me forever, and take you as a bride unto me in righteousness, and in right ruling, and loving commitment and compassion. And I shall take you as a bride unto me in trustworthiness, and you shall know Yod-Heh. So we see who's going to be part of this marriage. I'm going to go to Revelation chapter 21. I will jump around a little bit in there. I'm not going to read all of that chapter, but I want to point out some stuff in Revelation chapter 21, in verse 2 and 3. And I, Yohanan, John, saw the set-apart city, renewed Jerusalem, coming down out of the heaven from Elohim, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the heaven saying, See, the booth of Elohim is with men, and he shall dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and Elohim himself shall be with them, and be their Elohim. I'm going to fast forward through to verse 9 through 14. And one of the 7 messengers who held the 7 bowls filled with the 7 last plagues came to me and spoke with me, saying, Come, I shall show you the bride, the Lamb's wife. So his body, his completed body, his bride. And he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain, and showed me the great city, the set apart Jerusalem, descending out of the heaven from Elohim, having the esteem of Elohim, and her light was like a most precious stone, like a jasper stone, clear as crystal, and having a great and high wall, having 12 gates, and the 12 gates 12 messengers, and the names written on them, which are those of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. 3 gates on the east, 3 gates on the north, 3 gates on the south, and the 3 gates on the west. And on the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 emissaries of the Lamb. So, it is very important to want to be part of the body of the Messiah that is deliberately mistranslated and given to a building, is given to the Roman Catholic Church. So you want to be part of Israel, God's people. Don't be part of the church. It is a major deception. They have gotten as big as they are because when you do read our New Testament, it's very clear the importance of the church or the ecclesia. It's very important to be part of the kahal, but it was deliberately given to them because they just wanted to give authority to themselves. So, why do I think it's important? I'm only going to read these one verse. I'm not going to read the many of them all throughout the scriptures, but this is what should be done. I myself am a hypocrite of it. I don't participate of it. So this is my being part of it, but I look forward to the time when the judge will be here. I look forward to it, but I'm only going to read one part. So a church is a building. It's a high place. It's a worship. It's a high place of worship. So we see churches, these buildings, these high places of worship, churches, these mosques, which is church. We see these places all throughout the world today. So I want to read Deuteronomy chapter 12, verses 1 through 5, and hopefully you have the ears to hear this. These are the laws and right rulings which you guard to do in the land which Yod-Heh Elohim of your fathers, is giving you to possess all the days that you live on the soil. Completely destroy all the places where the nations which you are disposing served their mighty ones, on the high mountains, and on the hills, and under every green tree. And you shall break down their slaughter places, and smash their pillars, and burn their Asherim with fire. And you shall cut down the carved images of their mighty ones, and shall destroy their name out of that place. Do not do so to Yod-Heh, your Elohim, but seek the place which Yod-Heh, your Elohim, chooses out of all your tribes, to put his name there for his dwelling place, and there you shall enter. I want to point out one more thing that Stephen mentions in Acts chapter 7, shortly after he pointed out that the church is the children of Israel, in Acts 7:38. But just a little bit after that, he mentions in 47 through 51. But Solomon built him a house. However, the Most High does not dwell in dwellings made with hands. As the prophet says, the heaven is my throne, and the earth is my footstool. What house shall you build for me, says Yod-Heh? Or what is the place of my rest? Has my hand not made all these? You stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears. So, hopefully, this helped you. If I'm incorrect on my conclusions, please correct me. I have at least acknowledged and accepted some of those facts in my reasoning, and I hope it helps you, and hopefully you can help me if I'm incorrect. Be blessed. Seek the truth. Get away from church. And let Yod-Heh speak to you through his word. So, have a blessed day and take care.